Please be seated. Title of my sermon this morning is from Rocky Ground, taken from reading Matthew's Gospel. Other seeds fell on rocky ground. One of our problems today is that we have so many opportunities to immediately satisfy our impulses. To be a modern person today is to get what we want right now, and it consumes our attention. Here are a couple examples. In my senior year at seminary, I was the liaison to the African students. My classmates included people from Tanzania, Nigeria, Malawi, the Sudan, and South Africa. I would always look for ways to show them American culture. For instance, the first thing my family and I did was to take them all to Ben & Jerry's. They had never had ice cream before, and it was remarkable to watch them, and my children watch them, as they first had that such common American treat. What was most interesting to me, however, was when I would take them to the grocery store. One time, one of the guys I took was astounded at the varieties and amount of cereal lining the shelves. That comment has never left me. Whenever I'm in the cereal aisle, I always pause to remember what he said. And I consider the amount of cereal that we have to choose from. Top to bottom of half an aisle in most grocery stores is lined with varieties of cereal, more than we could ever imagine, but would satisfy any impulse that we may have in that moment. Here's another one. You may be aware that last week was Amazon Prime Day. On July 11th, Amazon gave special discounts for Prime members. It was an impulse bonanza. Why not? Amazon is the place where impulse goes on steroids. Anything you want is just a click away. And for Prime members, you can have it in 2 days with free shipping. Amazon, like most online retailers, has mastered the art of grabbing our attention and causing us to satisfy our impulses immediately. Here's another example. A study of Princeton seminary students showed the power of impulse and the impact it has on our attention. Researchers assigned some students the task of giving a sermon, but with little time to prepare. Half were to preach on the Good Samaritan, and the other half were given random verses. Right before they were to give their sermon, they had to cross through a courtyard. There was a man in the courtyard. He was moaning in pain. Of course, they stopped to help, right? I mean, they're seminary students. They're among the most caring people ever. The researchers wanted to know which students were most likely to help. Did the sermon topic make a difference in their showing of compassion? The study showed it didn't. What mattered most was how much time the students had before they had to give their sermon. This led to the conclusion that where our attention is makes a difference regarding our compassion and empathy. If it is inwardly focused, we don't have as much empathy as we do when it is outwardly focused. Here's the rub. Today, on a daily basis, we process 5 times more information than we did 30 years ago. Information consumes our attention. Impulse and attention, they seem to go hand in hand today. But our reading this morning, the parable of the sower, is a cautionary tale for us. Jesus warns us about impulse and attention. The sower aimlessly and wastefully casts seeds. Some fell on the rocky ground. What happened? In the thin soil, the seeds quickly germinated, but in the scorching sun, they died just as quickly. The seeds on the rocky ground are like our impulses and attention these days. Something grasps our attention. It stimulates our impulses. We quickly, immediately take action. We buy something. We post something. We say something. We act. But our actions, when based on our immediate attention and impulse, tend to fall short. For us to be at our best, we must move from the rocky ground. We must find our way to the good soil. In our garden, in our Connecticut home, I'm growing potatoes. This is my first attempt. I decided to grow them in something that's called a potato box. It's about 2 feet by 2 feet, maybe a little bit wider here and there, but about that. And it has 4 posts, 1 in each corner. And it starts by you attach boards to each side, thus making a box. You plant in the soil that is in the box, the potato starts. And as they grow, once they reach to about 12 inches, I added a layer of soil to them about 1/3 of the way up. And I put on another board and add some more soil. And I've repeated this over and over again. Remarkable how quickly these plants are growing. But over and over again, until now I just have 1 set of boards to place on. So it's about 4 feet high. And the plants themselves, I've got 6, from the starts all the way up, I've got a good 6 feet worth of potato plant growing, more than half of it in the ground now. That reminds me, it calls my attention to what Jesus said about the good soil. The potato plants are flourishing and growing rapidly in the good soil that I add almost every week to the box. It speaks about what Jesus meant when he spoke about good soil. It reminds us also of the impact our decisions have when our attention is inwardly focused and our decisions are impulsive. Growing potatoes or any plant in the garden involves a different set of skills and thinking than the impulsive ones. We need a plan. We need to prepare our good soil. We must put our plant in the right location where there's enough water, where there's the right amount of sun. And the garden should have a variety of plants that will attract bees. And it takes time. Our attention must not be on one thing, but on many things. We can't be impulsive when we are growing food. This is why Jesus encourages us to find good soil. The parable of the sower reminds us that impulses may hamper us, drawing our attention inward. Think about the seminarians who ignored the man in pain. Think of the people who text and drive or walk and text. Think of the variety of things we do on impulse that later on we regret. We have this wonderful guidance from Jesus. Find good soil. Don't act impulsively. Follow his teachings. Draw our attention outside of ourselves to others. When we do, we become our best selves. We discover ways of being that bring us to new levels of joy. We find in ourselves a new way to relate to people. We find relationships with people who will bring us to a deeper place of love. And we find new ways to love our families, our friends, our spouses, and our children, and most of all, God.